Welcome to On the Bobble Podcast, episode 138. I'm your host, Tsubasa J. With me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. We're going to be doing an episode talking about the Sage BnR that just got announced, the Montreal results, and our predictions or just the thoughts on CCPQ. Our thoughts on PQ Week 1 for the CC meta. PQ Week 1? PQ Week 1 CC? Our thoughts on...
the first week of CC ProQuest.
Our thoughts on the first week of the CC ProQuests. Okay, awesome. So
nailed it in one.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I guess I'm keeping this in now. Okay. I guess let's start with how's your week, or how was your trip for Montreal, Yuki?
My trip was good. I had a decent tournament. I ended up exactly 32nd at XN4, which is kind of a good result. Like I thought I was going to be dead because I was X4 going into the last round, and I was like 37th or 38th, and I was like, there's like 10 people above me at XN4 and a whole bunch of people that are locked because all the X3s are going to be higher standings than me for sure. I was like, I think I have no shot. And then as I'm like pairing into the round, my friend Jimmy's texting me, and he's just like, yeah, like, so like the pairings are like this. There's these 5 people paired. 2 of them are going to create a loss for sure because like they're both above you. So like one of them has to lose. And then you just need like 3 other people to lose. And there's these 5 matches. So like you need these 5 matches to go like this person win, this person win, this person win. And you can win like 3 of those and lose 2 of those. And if that happens, you'll come in exactly 32nd. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go play my round. And then I go play my round. Cause like the pairings, for whatever reason, the pairings were up and they took like a little while or like the standings were up and they took a little while to process everything. But anyways, so I go into my last round. I managed to win. And then I get this like live update from Jimmy about all the rounds. And he's like, if all my math is right, you're exactly 32nd. And then I came in exactly 32nd, which was pretty funny. So I was happy to cash, happy to get World Tour points. I liked my deck. I played KO Armed and Dangerous, which I think was probably the best choice for the weekend, honestly. The numbers kind of support that. We'll talk about that as we get into the event. But yeah, I had a good time. The trip was good. I ate probably too much poutine, but it was enjoyable. And man, it was really cold. Like some of the days weren't so bad. It was like -5, -10, but on the last 2 days, it was like down to -20, and -20 is not very fun.
Oh, it's that cold at Montreal right now?
Yeah. Apparently the whole East Coast has been having like one of the most brutal winters they've had in quite some time. Like Toronto's similar. I imagine some of the cities in the US must be the same too.
Oh, wow, that's crazy, because I feel like just a couple days ago I went outside in shorts.
I guess in contrast, here on the West Coast, we're having a really mild winter, which is like kind of nice. I like skiing though, and the ski season has been terrible until very recently. Very recently, there's been like a little bit of snow, but otherwise the ski season has been terrible. So yeah, pros and cons, I guess.
Yeah, that is true. We saw our like first snowfall of the year like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. And it was very light and nothing stuck. So honestly, I like this better.
Yeah. I think for folks in the city, warmer winter is better. Hopefully it doesn't translate into wildfires as it sometimes does, but we'll see. Anyways, enough about that little tangent. Yeah, I had fun in Montreal. It's good to be back. It's I guess we're getting ready for PQs, and then I'll be headed to calling Memphis in a few weeks, and then Shanghai, and then Yokohama. So it'll be quite busy. We'll see if we can maybe record a little bit in there, although around the PT, I know you'll also be away. So there may be a few weeks around the PT where there is not as much content.
I think I would like to try and record a little bit, like maybe some like future episodes to have some small like 30-minute like blurbs that come out while we're kind of away on the Japan trips.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You can do like a level up episode or something like that.
Yeah, and then just have it like posted that just comes out sometime in April, so it doesn't feel like we're away for too long. Yeah, or even maybe I could get some random other people to talk to me for like half an hour. That would be kind of good too. We'll see
Yeah,
if I can get a new one.
yeah, that's something we can definitely set up. If there is, I guess, either someone that you'd really like to see on the show or a topic that you'd like us to cover, like a level up topic of some sort, that we could pre-record, let us know, and that's something that we can do. And so, yeah, you can let us know through any of the usual kind of ways. For a lot of people, that is through the Discord. So all of our patrons get access to the Discord. You can find us on patreon.com/onthebobble. And I guess this is a great time to thank all of the patrons who give back to the show and make this show possible. We couldn't be doing what we're doing without you. You make this show happen, and we just really appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you so much for everything that you do for us. And thank you to all of our listeners who tune in. You know, even if you're not able to give back, we appreciate you listening, and some of you coming up and saying hi. I had quite a few people come up and chat at Montreal, and that's always a highlight. It's nice to know that, because from our perspective, we kind of just record the episodes and they go out there, and it's nice to kind of see people's faces and go, oh, actually people listen to this, because you see the numbers go up, but you don't actually see people listening. So that's always really nice. But yeah, that's the Patreon. If you want to support us and you want to look for singles, you can also go to invasioncnc.ca. They're one of the largest Canadian retailers and where I buy all my Flesh and Blood cards. And you can use code YLB5 for 5% off your cart for all singles. And that will help you save a little bit of money and also let them know that we sent you there and help support the show. So it's a great way to save some money and help us out as well. But yeah.
Okay. Then let's move into one of our main topics. Our first thing to talk about here will be the Silver Age BnR. So we are done with Silver Age ProQuests, and LSS finally got data on that. So now they've made some decisions to ban some problematic cards in the format, and more importantly, actually unbanning some cards. So I guess let's talk about the banned cards first. I think when we talked about Silver Age last time, we were talking about like there was 4 problematic decks, or the 4 decks that just kept on winning every event. So that was Briar, KO, Decimator Axe Dorenthia, and Kano. And everyone got hit here, right? Except for maybe Briar, who got hit even like the most, in my opinion.
Yeah, Briar definitely got hit the hardest. The other 3 decks also got hit a little bit. And that sort of makes sense. We talked about on the episode last week that it was like one of the most, I guess, extreme meta games that we've seen, where like there's so much consolidation in just a few decks. And week 2, we won't go through all the results, but it looked very similar. It might have been even a little bit more so Briar, KO, and then everything else. So I think Briar getting hit makes a lot of sense. The bans do seem quite harsh and probably gives her some bad matchups. I guess if we can talk about those bans. The bans are Bracers of Belief, so on board, +2 damage, also helps enable Flourish. So losing this is... She did play the armor in some matchups, but losing the offensive option into the fatigue decks is pretty big. She lost Lightning Press, which was a huge part of the plan into fatigue decks, especially if you play like Flourish and then you could use Lightning Press to turn it on for +6 at instant speed. That's no longer a play pattern that she has. It can also just be chip damage. And then the final card she lost was Burn Up Shock, which is a real power card when you can line it up and push it through. 0 for 5 is incredible. And even when you can't, you could often block for 4 with it with an embodiment. So these are some pretty big hits to Briar.
Yeah, I think the biggest part about this is, as you mentioned, all 3 of these cards were ways for Briar to get over the top against Fatigue. And we lost Burn Up Shock, we lost Lightning Press. Like, you kind of wanted to pitch stack these 2 together to explode Fatigue decks in like 1 turn. And now you can't really do that. So I feel like Briar is going to have like this huge weakness of like losing to 4 blocks, and just getting blocked out now is probably going to be a pretty big, like a pretty reasonable strategy into Briar that I don't know how Briar is going to get over it except with Evergreens right now. And that's typically not good enough just on its own.
Yeah, I think that Briar already was somewhat susceptible to fatigue. Like, if you really targeted Briar with a Guardian list, you could have a pretty solid matchup in her. And so losing these tools has to hurt that matchup a lot and opens up a pretty big weakness. I suspect that Briar is still a playable deck. Like, if we still had PQ results, I would still imagine that you would see some Briar wins. Like, but I would imagine it'd be more in the like 7th to 10th most represented deck. Maybe to get like 10 wins in a week or something like this. Eight to 10 wins in a week, something like that is kind of what I would guess. But this is more based on speculation than actual games.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like the deck still does like its core game plan is the same, right? Like it still just like plays a bunch of 0 for 4s, a bunch of 0 for 3 pumps, and just converts hands really, really well and really, really efficiently. But yeah, it just lost its good matchup was also fatigue before, and now that's just like no longer the case, and that's a really hard matchup now. So I like these bans. I think these bans are kind of warranted for this deck.
Yeah, I agree. There's a little bit of splash damage with Lightning Press to decks like Lexi, I think gets worse. Aurora, not that she was the most meta deck, also gets worse. So this does affect other heroes, but I do think these are primarily aimed towards Briar.
And let's talk about the next card, Aether Spindle. Man, I am so happy this card is gone. Like, this is the one card Kano didn't need, and once this card is gone, and now I feel a little bit like you get to keep hands where you weren't going to keep otherwise. Like, I think I talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago in the podcast, but whenever Kano Aether Spindled you in Silver Age, you had to stop this card, right? Like, you can't let this hit for 5, because the moment it hits for 5 and they opt 5 cards, they get to choose one card that they're going to hit off the Kano activation of the next turn. And that's a pretty big upside. Is that the best way to say it?
Yeah.
So like they get to save their ops, and they get to choose which red they want on top, and then they get an extra blue in their hand essentially. It's this card was like way too good. You had to stop this card. You had to AB this card, even if it was AB2, AB1. Like you couldn't let this hit for 5. And now that this card's gone, now you actually have the option to be like, if they just send like a regular arcane damage for 5, you could just take the 5 and try and send enough damage for Kano to essentially die, because now they don't know what the top card of their deck is. It's actually a great ban. I think this card needed to go.
Yeah, I think that this is sort of like the Briar ban, maybe the opposite, but like I think where this makes a big difference is into the low AB aggro decks, where Kano I think was a little weaker. Generally, the slow matchups with Kano you are quite good because you have all the time to pitch stacks set up. They don't really pressure your life total enough, and I think those matchups are probably still good. And that's probably where Aether Spindle is at its worst, because those decks often have AB3 anyways, and then when you get the opt 1 or 2, it's kind of whatever. But Aether Spindle really created these huge blowouts when you have like an AB1 opponent, you play this on turn 0, and it's like, because the other thing that this does is if you have a full hand, you get to opt and then set up your Kano activation, so you get like 2 spells on that turn, and then you get to set up your next hand as well a little bit if you want some blues or a blue and a red or just like whatever it is, you get to sculpt your next hand as well. So I think some of the biggest blowouts into the aggro decks was off of the back of Aether Spindle, and with that gone, I suspect that Kano probably has a hard time into some of these kind of like lower AB aggro decks, especially if they are teched for him with like polarities and stuff. And I think it kind of just gives him a weakness or some bad matchups. So that's kind of why I say it's similar to the Briar ban.
Beautiful banning. Beautiful banning. The next card next will be for Dawnblade Dory. Steelblade Shunt. All 3 colors of this card got banned. That deck used to play 6 copies of Steelblade Shunt, the full playset of the Rainbow. This is going to hurt this deck a lot. I think Decimator Axe is one of those decks that really wanted to play like a long game, attack with Decimator every turn, and just like slowly chip damage, and you'll end up fatiguing if you don't attack with your weapon. And the way that they punish you for that was playing Steelblade Shunts and just keep on chipping you even faster. Now that they lose Steelblade Shunt, I think Decimator Great Axe is going to be still playable, but I feel like a lot of the play patterns at the end of the game where you go to like 2, maybe 3, and they like triple steel blade shunt you or double steel blade shunt you is not going to be an option anymore. So I think this is like a significant banning for that deck, and I don't know if this deck will survive this ban.
Yeah, I think that this sort of hurts their best matchups, which are like the Guardians and stuff like that, where you play a really long game, because these are a ton of deck damage. Or, well, like, I guess they don't damage the opponent's deck, but they let you block for 6, 5, or 4 off of a single card out of your deck and potentially even do a damage back to them as well. So I think this card was in combination with Decimator Great Axe, was a big reason why Doranthea was almost deterministic into Guardian, it felt like, in the hands of a good player. And I think that probably is no longer the case. So this probably hurts her good matchups. Whereas, like, against Briar, I think the shunts are a lot weaker, for example.
Oh my god, last ProQuest. Gonna talk about my ProQuest experience from this weekend while you guys were at Montreal, but I attacked with the Starfall at the end of the game, and then I got double shunted for game, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot about the double shunt, the double blue shunt, and I'm just like, why did I play into this and lost the game? But man, shunts are still good into Briar. It killed me. Oh my god. If I don't attack though, is that they get to like attack with Decimator Axe, and I'm gonna end up losing anyways. But like, oh, the shunts made it like guaranteed that they win the game. And I wasn't really paying attention to the pitch deck because like I was expecting to kill them before that point, and came down to the pitch deck and I got double blue shunted. Oh, that felt so bad.
Yeah, for sure. All right, on to the final card, Sirens of Safe Harbor. This is a generic, so this probably applies to multiple decks, but I think the biggest deck that, like, I think like Dawnblade, or I think Decimator Great Axe was playing like blues of this, for example. But anyways, the biggest thing for this is definitely KO. KO played the reds and often the yellows, and you could discard this to gain a life, which was a lot of nice extra value. And the red is sort of like a 2-for-7 when you attack with it, and it also sort of blocks 3. I guess if they're pushing for lethal, it doesn't block 3 till the end of the turn. But yeah, this card was really good in KO, and is a loss for that deck. But I think that KO got off the lightest of all the heroes affected by the BnR.
Yeah, the problem with trying to ban something from KO is that all of their cards kind of do the same thing, other than maybe Wild Ride and Bear Fangs. But if you take out Bear Fangs and Wild Ride from KO, like, what do they get left, right? Like, they don't have anything going for them at that point. So those, you can't really ban those cards because it's too heavy of a ban. Whereas like Sirens makes a lot of sense, where this card is like unreplaceable, right? There's no card in the game that can replace this ability, and that triggers KO's hero's text. So I feel like this is like a necessary ban. I really don't like it because it hit my Guardian decks for splash damage, but that aside, I think this is a pretty good ban. I think the biggest thing for this Sirens is that it really created these spots where KO is an aggro deck, and typically once they're at like 2 or 1, you get to really like essentially Kodachi lock them with like Kodachis, or like attack with a Titan's Fist and threaten 4, so they have to block with 2 cards. But the moment they like block with a Sirens and a 3 block, or even double Sirens on a 4, and they go back to 3, they're no longer under this Kodachi lock. So they have these like really weird outs where you took damage to like push them to 1. So then you can like Kodachi lock them, and then they get out of it because they have Sirens still. And that doesn't feel the greatest in my opinion. And this aggro deck being able to like get out of these spots felt really unfair.
Yeah. I've had the same experience against KO. The worst is if they keep like a 2-card hand and they Bear Fangs you, which is already a sweet card, and then they discard a Sirens, and it's just like, oh, I thought I was in a winning position. I can't win anymore.
Yeah. The one life gain is really impactful, and I think this is a good ban.
Yeah, I think so too. A lot of the discussion I have heard from people is that KO is likely very good, and that seems to be the case. Based like we played an Armory last night, that seemed to be the case, and conceptually that kind of makes sense to me. It's still early. There's a lot to explore. We will see, but I think that KO is at the very least the logical starting point for the format, where you probably want to test decks into KO, see how they line up into him, and then that will give you some idea of what the rest of the meta will look like if you're somebody that's looking to play more Silver Age, maybe just for armories, or even if you're prepping for Shanghai or Yokohama.
I actually went 4-0 yesterday with Oldham, and that was a deck that I actually haven't changed since the BnR, and I just like showed up to Armory, looked at my deck and go, oh wait, this deck plays Sirens. Oh no, I'm playing a 53 card deck now. But because all of the other matchups just kind of got a little bit easier, I feel like Guardians is going to be a real contender in the format again.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because I think that outside of these kind of top 4 decks that we just touched on, Briar, Decimator, Great Axe, KO, and Kano, after that it was kind of the Guardians, and they, depending on your list, you lost Sirens, but overall they didn't really lose anything, and the other decks did lose stuff. So I think that it sort of makes sense that Guardian is much more competitive now. Enigma is another one that might be more competitive, and the Ninjas, like the Iras and the Phis. So all of those decks that were like pretty good, would sometimes top 8, picked up some solid wins, I think are now like really worth looking at. And KO, because didn't get hit that hard and was already a good deck.
Yes, yes. The lightest ban was on KO. Then let's talk about maybe some newer decks that could maybe come out from the unbanned cards. Let's talk about the first card here first. This is going to be Amulet of Ice. This was going to give Icelander a chance, right? Amulet of Ice was a card that was banned in CC for quite a while, and now for the first time we get to see it in play for the Silver Age format. Do you have any thoughts on Amulet of Ice?
Amulet of Ice is a super good blue for Icelander. Not only is it just a blue that gives them a frostbite, or you can play it to convert larger hands, which is one of the things Icelander can struggle with, but also if you get to keep it if you get to have it in play, then keep a hand that resolves Aether Ice Vein, you can get a huge amount of tempo and often take over the game. That being said, I'm a little skeptical of Icelander being good enough. I think that KO in particular seems like a really hard matchup. He just has a ton of pitch available, has really good numbers, and can you resolve early Amulet of Ices going first and then have a really sweet turn and maybe take over the game? Yeah, probably. It's probably possible, but I suspect that matchup is quite hard. So I'm a little bit skeptical of Icelander actually being good enough, despite Amulet of Ice being a big pickup for that deck. It's sort of, I think Icelander was quite weak. If she was in this like Phi category, Ira category, where it's like close but not quite there, like Amulet of Ice would probably give her enough of a bump. But I think that, like, at most she might be up to kind of where they were before, and maybe even weaker than that. I think she has some issues. The ice card pool is pretty weak, and I think she really misses Waning Moon. Like, you still don't get to play Polar Blast, you still don't get to play Cold Snap, and that's just really tough for that deck.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But Amulet of Ice does give it potential, though, right?
Yeah. I'll probably be spending a little time on Icelander just because she's one of my all-time favorite decks. But it's more of a I want it to be good and less of a I actually think it will be good, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. Then the next card is a card that probably actually makes this deck good, and that's going to be Rake the Embers. This is a Draconic Illusionist action. For those that don't know, it's a 1 cost, non-attack action, and it reads, create an Ash token, then transform up to 3 Ash you control into Aether Ashwings, go again. So this card was a house when this card was legal in CC, and I feel like this card single-handedly made Dromai like insanely good into a lot of different decks. And now, for the first time as well, it's unbanned in Silver Age. And this is going to give Dromai a huge push, and I've been testing some Dromai lists. It is a little bit tougher to make this work in Silver Age than it was in CC, in my opinion. What's your thoughts so far?
Yeah, I played Dromai at Armory last night. I think I went 2-2. My losses were to Guardians. So I think that this gives Dromai a much more, I guess, like stable or much better options into the aggressive decks, because Once you resolve Rake the Embers, you get 3 damage on that turn. But basically, anytime you can enable Go again, you probably get 3 more damage on the following turn. And it is possible that they kill the Ashwings, but then that's like even more extra value for you. Like if they, let's say that they like Starfall an Ashwing every turn, you get like 3 damage, plus 2 life, plus 2 damage, plus 2 life, plus 1 damage, plus 2 life. It's just like a ton of value. So it's sort of like often they can't afford to kill the Ashwings. And either way, you're kind of coming out ahead. And it helps you do this. Like I set up 3 Ashwings and a dragon. I arsenal a starter, and then I can just like block, play a starter, do like 10 damage, and then just kind of have these like 1 card 10s because I have a big board. And so you're a lot better into the aggro decks. I think you need to really figure out the popper decks, and I currently am a little unsure if it's possible with the card pool. A lot of the way that Drama traditionally did this is you have your 3 Chroma, your 3 Miragai, and some Time Snap potions potentially. You also have Ghostly Touch, but we don't have Ghostly Touch, and we also don't have Remembrance to shuffle back the Miragais and Chromais. So kind of the best thing you can set up is like Miragai double Chromai. But if your opponent just has 3 poppers in their hand, then you don't get there. And that happened in both the games that I ended up losing. I guess one game I didn't set it up properly. Then Jay and I played another game, and he had 3 poppers. And then I played a Fatigue Pleiades deck that had like 34 poppers in their deck, and that was just cursed. But yeah, I think figuring out the win con into these Fatigue decks or these popper heavy decks like the Guardians and potentially even KO is going to be the big thing for Dromai. And if you can do that, the deck has legs. And if you can't, then the deck is kind of tough, is like sort of my opinion. Time Snap potions might be interesting. And I think that maybe you can like do like double Haboob to give all their stuff -1. So then, and then if you set up like double Haboob, double Chromai, for example, then they need 3 poppers, but they all have to be 8s or higher, which starts to get pretty hard.
That's definitely a hard ask because they also need to play the 8 power poppers, which there isn't that many if they're not Oldham.
So there's definitely some stuff to explore, but I think because you only have 2 copies of all of these cards and you kind of need like doubles and like combinations of them, it makes it pretty challenging to set up. And you can just like have these hands that don't have costed cards, so you don't get to pitch stack it. So yeah, my current impression is I don't know if Dromai is good, but there's potential because Rake is really strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I agree with you. And the last card here that got unbanned is Rootbound Carapace. I completely forgot that this card was banned in the first place. It was just kind of like out of my mind. And then I saw the announcement and I go, oh yeah, this card was banned. No wonder no one was playing this card. And this is a huge upgrade for Oldham. I didn't play it yesterday because I just forgot that this card wasn't legal, or this card is legal now, but I'm going to put that in Oldham, and now I'll have like 12 4-blocks on that deck. Oh, sounds so good.
Yeah, I think Oldham and Terra are probably the biggest winners. You could say that Florian and Verdance are because it helps turn on their hero ability, but I am a little bit skeptical of those decks even still. It is really hard to have a hero where you need to turn on your hero ability in a format where a lot of the games are like 3 turns. And like, yeah, you can play like super defensively to try and get your hero ability online, but I think if you want to play super defensively, I'd rather be a Guardian than like a Florian, for example. Like if you're wanting to stack as Florian, I feel like I'd rather just stack rune chance as Viserai and have extra rune chance to start with and not have to like get my hero ability online and probably play some Earth 2 blocks to do it and then start getting extra value. It just seems a little slow.
Mm-hmm. I think the other problem is that like Florian doesn't have Grasp of Arknight, which was like a huge thing about like going online, and then activating Grasp was like a main way that you've generated value. You don't have that, and Verdance don't have Storm Striders or Burn Bears, so like how do you close out games with Verdance in this format? I'm actually not exactly sure. And like one of the biggest upsides about playing Rootbound Carapace in CC is that it immediately turns on cards like Plow Under and Felling of the Crown. And you don't have those payoffs. You don't really need a reason to decompose the first time. So Rootbound Carapace just being a 4-block is great, but it doesn't actually serve you more than that.
Yeah. It does help you get towards your hero ability, but yeah, the games are so condensed that it's like hard to have everything line up where you get your Earth cards in the graveyard, you get your hero ability online, and then like how many, I don't know, if you're playing against an Ira, they're getting a point every turn. So like how many turns do you need before you kind of like balance that out? It's like probably a lot, right? So yeah, I think that this seems great for Terra and Oldhim. It is good for Florian and Verdance. I'm skeptical of those decks being good enough, basically.
Yeah, I think they go from unplayable to playable though.
Yeah. I think it is like a very meaningful upgrade, and I think you could play like a stack Florian deck is probably the way I would look. Verdance, I'm a little bit less sure of. Because Florian gets to play like Reduce to Rune Chant, which is a really powerful card. You have Arcane Seed's Life, you have Read the Runes. So you can play this like Rune Chant stacking deck. You're probably pretty good into the Guardians, and then like really bad into Kano and question mark into KO. Maybe you can stack KO. I don't know. I haven't tried.
Yeah, we'll know as the format stabilizes. But I think one of the most interesting things about this BnR announcement, at least to me, was the next scheduled BnR announcement got announced for in this announcement, which was it's gonna be on Monday, March 23rd, which is 2 weeks before Pro Tour Yokohama. And this is only going to address the CC format. So Sage is locked in with these BNRs, but the CC format could still change depending on what the next couple of callings show us.
Yeah. I think they had previously announced this as well, but I think this is sort of a reminder. So yeah, we do have potential changes to CC after the PQ season, but before the PT, which will be interesting to see. I guess probably as we start getting some data from PQs, it'll become more clear how likely that is. But so far, I guess kind of going into our next topic, looking at Calling Montreal, things seemed pretty diverse, and there's also some living legends potentially coming up. So I think that the format is going to have some natural shakeups. And I guess just like at a glance, looking at the results and everything, it's like there probably doesn't need to be bans, but of course things can change. Things tend to solidify, and this was the very first event of the format, so there could be something out there that hasn't been fully refined or fully figured out yet, and we'll see exactly what happens as we get deeper into PQs. But right now, looks pretty healthy.
We had 282 players registered for Calling Montreal. The most represented deck with 32 copies was Arachne Marionette, and that was only 11% of the field. So that was the most represented deck at just over 10%. That is not that many. And then the next hero will be 26 heroes at Verdance and 25 players at Acilio. So we have a assassin, then a wizard, and a wizard. I just go down the list until we hit the 5% mark. So we had Dash IO at 17 players at 6%, and then KO Armed and Dangerous at 17 players for 6% as well. And then we had 13 Fies for 5% of the field. And so that's about roughly like just over a third of the field. And we have basically a slew of every hero that's legal in this format.
Yeah. This was one of the most diverse meta games in the field. Was just like super, super wide. I played KO primarily to target Acilio and Fi, and it has a decent Marionette matchup, a decent Verdance matchup, so I thought it was well positioned. I played no Fies, no Acilios all weekend, which like maybe statistically, maybe I could have, but combined they were 14% of the metagame. So yeah, right now at least, or at least in Calling Montreal, it was just very, I think having good matchups into an open field and some solid matchups at the top of the metagame was probably what you wanted to have. And I suspect going into PQs that will probably also be the case, because people are more likely to bring the decks that they like or the decks that they have, and less likely to chase the meta at smaller local events. So yeah, you'll know your own local meta better than we will, but yeah, I would suspect a pretty diverse week one of the metagame.
I'm actually really happy with this metagame. There's nothing that really stands out to be like so unfair, and everything is like pretty tame so far. And you know what? This is a pretty fun format to play. Like all the decks don't like they kind of like are fair against each other. There's no decks that feel kind of out of place at this point. So yeah, I've been enjoying the CC meta game so far.
Yeah, I also have. I know last week I was quite worried about Acilio. I am still scared of that deck, although his numbers in Montreal were super reasonable. So we'll see. Maybe, perhaps it is possible that I was too high on Acilio. It is also possible that Acilio is hard to play and the deck's still being refined. So we have to see what it is. There was, I guess, we'll talk about top 8 in a bit, but there, yeah. Next, we can talk about conversion rate, I guess. So top 64 converted. This is roughly a quarter of the decks that were in the field. So there's 282 players, 64 made top 8. That's roughly a quarter. So when thinking about these conversion rates, we should be comparing it to roughly 25%. So this is going from the most represented to the least represented in day 2. There's Marionette with 10 copies in day 2, 31% conversion rate, so a bit above average, which is pretty good for most represented deck. We had 8 KOs in the top 64 with 47% conversion rate, which is very, very impressive. We had 7 Verdances with 27%, about average. 4 Acilios with 16%, a little bit below average. 3 Prisms with 50%, above average, but small sample size. And we also had 3 Vinsets with 30%, which is notable because I think Vincent is a hero that was on nobody's radar and really had kind of like a breakout event, I would say. June played some very impressive games on camera with Vincent and actually ended up making it all the way to the finals. If you haven't watched some of June's games, I would really recommend it. Really kind of showing off the new card, in particular, the Deep Recesses of Evil, where if a hero has lost life, you can banish it face down, and then you get to banish a card from each player's graveyard. So you essentially get to choose a blood debt card of your choice to banish, and then you can later play that card because of how Vincent works. So this can be another attack to help you chain together rune gates and set up. This can be a call for more disruption. This can be a funeral moon to help fuel your rune gates. Super, super flexible and really, really powerful. It does cost 4, but it does attack for 6 and it's a blue. So yeah, this card was kind of the new piece that Vincent got out of Compendium and was really, really impressive.
Another note on that card is that it also hits your opponent's graveyard too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can use it to trim like Leave No Witnesses from an assassin.
Yeah, you can also try and hit people's Phoenix Flames if they're playing Fi.
Yeah.
And yeah, just being the symmetrical banish is like actually so meaningful. It's kind of crazy. That card was very impressive on camera.
Yeah, so despite, like 3 copies, 30% conversion rate, I think that June showed off Vincent and was kind of like the big story of the weekend. So I would expect a pretty big uptick in Vincent. I think that mostly like things will kind of look like the calling would be my guess. I don't think that there was anything super crazy, but I expect Vincent to see a lot of adoption. I've seen more of it on Talishar, and I think there's going to be a lot of people trying this deck out. I think Vincent's still very hard to pilot. So if you are wanting to play Vincent at your PQs, I'd recommend you get your reps. But that is sort of like the one notable thing from day 2 that I don't think anybody really saw coming was Vincent just doing super, super well.
Mm-hmm. I guess the one other deck to talk about would be the other 7-0 deck from day 1, which was Arachne Huntsman. You know what? I'm so proud. There's a Huntsman at 7-0 at a calling. Oh, that makes me super happy. That was his name was Tao Tao Chu on Huntsman, and I guess spoilers, unfortunately he didn't top 8 after going 7-0. He bubbled 9th on Breakers, right? This is what I heard.
Yeah, he bubbled 9th on Breakers. Going into the last round, he was in 9th place with Naib on Fi at 8th place. They were both X and 3, and then everyone else was X and 2, so they were locked. So basically, he had a win in if he won and Naib lost, but Naib won his game, so he won his win in, which made Tao Tao stay at 9th place, which is a little tragic after you go 7-0, but card game tournaments are hard, and that's how it goes. I will say, huge shout out to Tao Tao. He has been on a tear. He top eighted calling San Diego on New, which at the time nobody was talking about New in Silver Age, and then he very nearly top eighted calling Montreal on Huntsman, who I also don't think was on most people's bingo cards. So yeah, longtime assassin player, very talented player, friend of mine. But yeah, he's been doing really, really well. So big shout out to Tao Tao. Super impressive results lately.
Okay. Is there any other decks from the top 64, the day two converted decks that you want to touch here? Everyone else was kind of either like slightly below or on average, but with just not that many copies of each deck that got registered for this event. So the data kind of varies wildly after once we're looking at these, like, Dorenthia's at 40% conversion, but 2 out of 5 made day two, which is very normal.
Yeah, not a huge amount to say. I guess like Gravy Bones was, I don't think we mentioned Gravy Bones because he was down to like 12 copies at 4% in day one. He had 25% conversion rate with 3 copies, which is basically exactly average. I know that this is a deck that a lot of people have been saying is kind of out of the meta because it has a bad Acilio matchup. There's a lot of aggro decks. And that does sort of appear to be true, but he also doesn't seem terrible, right? So like he just seems very average-ish. And I would say that Gravy Bones is one to maybe keep an eye on, as this deck is just so powerful. I'm like a little bit nervous to like count him out and be like, oh yeah, you can totally ignore Gravy Bones. Maybe things aren't quite right for him now, but I could see, depending on how the meta shifts, maybe there's more Vinsets. That's probably a good matchup for Gravy Bones if I had to guess. Maybe some other of the decks in top 8 kind of show up a little bit more. Like we had I guess moving into top 8, we had a Dorenthia in top 8, and I think Gravy's not bad into Dorenthia. So you start to have like potential for a deck like Gravy Bones to come back, and I think that that's something I'm curious to see, is if Gravy Bones will stay where he is or if he will kind of creep back into the metagame as he is. I think since he came out, he's been a pretty good deck, like at all times, and I'm a little skeptical that he has fallen as much as some people think he has.
Yeah, I think as long as Jimmy is playing Gravy Bones will sneak into the like top 16, top 32 area, right? Like Jimmy is like the most consistent result I've ever seen, and he's always on Gravy Bones. So it's just like, I think Jimmy ended up in this tournament at 13th, if I'm not mistaken, at 9-3. So, and I think he was at like near the top tables throughout the tournament when I was watching the stream. So definitely there's one guy carrying this deck right now.
Yeah, huge shout out to Jimmy. Also, like Justin Koo comes to mind as somebody who's been on this deck a bunch. Michael Fung has put up consistent results with this deck. Was not playing Gravy Bones this weekend, has branched out a little bit. But yeah, Gravy Bones is very much this specialist deck where I think in the hands of a really good Gravy pilot, I think that this deck is still maybe not where he was, going back to PT Singapore, but is still a good deck, and I think deserves a little more respect than people have been giving it.
Yeah. So one thing I just want to say about Gravy Bones, I'm moving towards giving up on that matchup as Huntsman at this point. Man, my sideboard feels so much better once I remove the 6 cards I had in for Gravy Bones and I have more space for everything else. I can just concede that game and be okay with my life. Oh, feels so good. Okay. Let's talk about the top 8 real quick. So the first seed was June on Vincent. Top 8 looks like 1 Vincent, 1 Phi, 2 Acilios, 1 KO, 1 Dash IE, and 1 Dorenthia, 1 Ira. So a very diverse top 8 with 2 Acilios. So we were talking about how Acilio didn't convert that well in day 2, but 2 of them made top 8.
So perhaps the number, it's hard to say, like it's always hard to tell from one event. You don't want to draw too many conclusions, but perhaps the win rate and conversion rate not telling the full story with this hero. Something that I saw in Michael Hamilton's list that really impressed me was Aether Spindle. we just talked about this card as a Silver Age banless card, and the opt is pretty impressive in Acilio. If you have a Gone in a Flash, you get to opt a bunch of cards and set up your Gone in a Flash combo to probably kill them on the next turn. And if you don't have a Gone in a Flash, if your next hand's really good, you can keep it, but you can also just dig 5, 6, 7 cards deep and try and find that Gone in a Flash that you need. And if you're comboing with Gone in a Flash and you Aether Spindle for 14 or something like this, your opponent's probably dead on their next turn or next two turns. Like you can sculpt multiple turns into the future. So that was a card that I hadn't really seen too much in Acilio that sort of made a ton of sense to me. And I don't think it was in Joe Birch's list, but yeah, might be, I don't know, part of the secret sauce for Acilio if I had to guess.
Interesting. You know what? One thing I just noticed as well is all four players that debuted on Acilio is in the top 16.
Yeah. And I think Alexander Vor also on Aether Spindle and is in the top 16. So yeah, I suspect that there is a little bit of the deck being refined, the deck being hard to play, but the deck being very, very powerful. We talked about Wobble last week as a really powerful card that the deck got, and it also got Cloud Cover as a red instant that sort of functions as a D-React. It prevents 3. Just like a lot more flexible than a D-React for Acilio. You can use it on your combo turn to bounce Gone in a Flash and get an amp, which is worth 5, which is pretty big upside, because normally the D-Reacts are like, you can run 3, but they're really clunky because you don't want them on the combo turn, whereas this is a card that kind of can do both a little bit.
It's like a flexible D-React. Wow, that's powerful.
So yeah, Acilio is one to keep an eye on. I may be picking this up for PQs just to try and learn the deck. Or Vincent. Those are kind of the two choices that I'm considering. But yeah, Acilio, I'm curious to see what happens with this deck. I still think this deck is really strong, and I think that despite the low numbers, I expected more Acilio. I expected it to do even better than it did, but 2 in top 8 and 4 in top 16 is definitely something to keep an eye on as we go into, I believe we have another calling this weekend in Toulouse, so I'll be really curious to see how that goes.
Okay, I guess last thing to say about this top 8 would be congrats to Connor Bryant for winning the event on Dash.io. I said IE earlier, I just noticed, but yeah, it's Dash.io and winning, and this gives this deck a bunch of LL points, and I guess this is still not close to LLing though, right?
Yeah, it's still quite a ways off, but yeah, it is notable. Congrats to Connor also. He's been playing Dash.io for a long time, and I think he had a top 8 in Kansas City last year and did quite well at Worlds. I played him in the last round of Worlds, so very cool to see him stick with that deck and get rewarded and get the big W. So yeah, just very well-deserved and hard fought. So congrats to Connor. I guess before we move on from this top 8, I will just shout out a couple of notable things. Dorenthia Iron Song, pretty much a traditional Dawnblade Dory list, came in second seed. Pretty impressive. It did promptly lose to Fatigue Ira with, I believe it's like 22 defense reactions or something like this, which does sound like a really bad matchup for Dorenthia. But yeah, really cool to see Dorenthia make top 8, potentially quite well positioned with this very aggressive leaning metagame. So Dorenthia, interesting choice. And I guess, yeah, Ira also notable as a deck that we hadn't really been talking about, wasn't really there in conversion rate, and sort of this surprise Fatigue build that I think really targeted the Marionette matchup. We saw Jacob Clements versus this deck, and yeah, when you just fat deck and stick a card in front of every dagger swing and then have a D-React to cover the reactions and then get to remembrance back cards, Marionette has trouble into it. I don't want to say like Marionette can't win, but I think especially as Marionette decks have like maybe moved away from Death Touch, moved away from Command and Conquer, and they just get to, oh, you want to do a Codex turn, I have overcrowded. It's a little hard to punch through. So very interesting angle of attack that I believe it's Norris had with Ira. Norris? I'm not sure how to say this name.
It's also notable that like if they don't know you're on fatigue Ira and you don't fat deck into a fatigue deck, you just like you're just giving them like 2 to 3 free turns of just like blocks, right? Because like now they don't have to care about running out of cards first.
And still has Mask of Momentum, I guess, to threaten that. So, you could potentially get quite caught off guard. Ira also a deck that slots in Disruption quite well, which I think is good in this metagame, like Fi, Acilio, Dio. A lot of these decks want to keep cards, don't want to block. So that's why I ended up on KO. He slots in Disruption really well. And I think similarly, Ira can also do this, whether you lean very fatiguey or more mid-rangey.
Okay. Okay. So congrats on everyone who top 8'd this event. Congrats Yuki for top 32 in this event. But let's talk about ProQuest Week 1 and maybe some of our potential LLs. How do you want to start this conversation?
So we have some heroes very close to Living Legend, and I think that as we go through the metagame, things are going to shift kind of naturally, both because of people learning about the metagame and metagames progressing, but also because of these Living Legends. So we have, I guess, technically 4 heroes that could LL. We'll start with KO, Armed and Dangerous, at 959 points and a 1.5 multiplier. Had a great weekend. We said, what was it? 47% conversion rate. Also had one of the highest win rates at the tournament, 57.4% win rate across all the matches at the calling. I think that this hero is probably gone after this week, or if not this week, then the second week he'll have hit Living Legend. I do have a guide for this hero up on Patreon, so if you're interested in that, you can take a look. That's basically outlining the deck that I played at the calling. But yeah, I think KO Armed and Dangerous is basically 100% gone. There's no way that this hero survives more than a week or two, in my opinion.
Yeah, probably not. How many events does it have to win? Like 10 for Dell? Maybe like 15, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, it's not a whole lot, and this deck is strong enough that I could see it going in a season. Next on the list, we have Verdance, Thorn of the Rose, 876 Living Legend points, so it needs 124 to hit Living Legend. She is now at 1.0 multiplier, and we saw this deck do really well just last season. I guess it was RTNs that we just had, and I think that she will continue to do well. She had a pretty average calling performance, but I think as soon as you get to the ProQuest level, Verdance just gets so many more points. Her game plan is powerful and straightforward. And if your opponent doesn't, I think if your opponent plays perfectly into it, she's a solid deck. And if your opponent doesn't play perfectly into it, she is a bit of a monster. And I think at the ProQuest level, that is the case. So I expect Verdance to do better at PQs than she did at the calling, for example. And I wouldn't be surprised to see her go, but I don't think it's a guarantee. It's like a likely but small, I would say maybe 20% chance that she's still here by Yokohama.
Yeah, I guess basically she's definitely gone if one person wins a calling on this, right? But just through the CC, sorry, just through the pro quests, she might survive at 950 points or 960 points, something like that, right?
Yeah, it really depends how much she wins. I think if she wins as much as she was winning last season, then she probably will go. And if she doesn't, if she falls off a little bit, she could survive. So a little bit up in the air.
Then the third hero on this list, I think, will survive, and that's going to be Prism Awakener of Soul. This one has 874 points right now, and hasn't been doing that well recently, right?
Yeah, we've been seeing a little bit of her here and there, but maybe with KO leaving, she could get a lot better. That matchup is very, very bad for her. So maybe once KO LLs, it will open the door for Prism a bit. But I don't think she's going to win enough to quite cross the finish line, even though she is at 1.5 LL points. So because of the multiplier, she doesn't need to win all that much. It's technically she needs much fewer events than Verdance does, but currently her win rate doesn't quite seem to be there. So
then the fourth hero on the list is a hero that could potentially LL. This one's also on a 1.5 multiplier. It's Phi Rising Rebellion, and 821 points means it's basically at Verdance level, right? Or it's easier to LL than Verdance, actually.
Yeah, and I think at the start of the season, I assumed this guy would go really quickly because of Art of War. I think that it's sort of interesting. Fi's numbers at the calling were fine, but not incredible. 23% conversion rate, but there was one in top eight. I suspect that this list is one that needs to evolve a little bit, but I also suspect that Fi might be. I think he's a good deck. I'm not sure he is quite the S tier menace that a lot of people thought that he would be. And I've seen this kind of reflected in a lot of like the discourse, people's tier lists, and all of this online. I think that Fi is like a solid A tier deck. That being said, people love Draconic Ninja. He's relatively straightforward to play. And we did just see Naib top eight. With quite an interesting list. He was playing Snapdragon Scalers. He had NIMBY in there for a Snaps target. I believe he was playing Inflame. It looked like he had like a 9D React package. So, yeah, quite an interesting take on the hero. And perhaps it's just a matter of needing a really refined Fi deck. I kind of want to take a look at Naib's deck, and I've taken a look at it, but I kind of want to try it out a little bit and see some of the ideas in it, because I don't know if Fi is just okay or if people hadn't quite found the good Fi deck yet.
Yeah, I feel like he's not one of those decks from like before when we had Belittle and stuff where he just gets to run at you and like you didn't really have a chance to beat it. If I might need an actual game plan now to like for against each hero to actually have an edge in this meta game, which is a good thing in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest notable thing about Fi is that a lot of these cards, like Art of the Phoenix War and Fire That Burns Within, they require you to have a Phoenix Flame in hand to cast Art of War and to really have Fire That Burns Within be a good card. And so it kind of requires you to warp your deck around it, and it makes Fi actually really fragile, where Fi used to be this deck that can kind of block, and he has the baseline of like head jab, sword, Phoenix Flame for one, and you can just kind of scale your hands up from there. You can add cards onto it or you can block with them. It doesn't really matter. Fi has a lot more of these kind of synergy pieces that actually really want big hands and Phoenix Flames in hand and all of this stuff. And a lot of these cards block 2, or Art of the Phoenix War blocks 0 and is a red instant. And you can kind of get stuck with these if you get disrupted. So I think that Fi, while his ceiling has maybe gone somewhat close to where he used to be, these cards are a lot more restrictive than Belittle or Art of War, and just makes him, you have the greatest hand in the world until somebody spinal crushes you, and then you realize you have to block, and then you're stuck with this red instant in your hand, and it's like, what do I do? So that's like some of the observations I've had about Fi. He's just a bit of a glass cannon now.
That's pretty fair. Yeah, I haven't really had that much trouble into Fi with as long as you have the disruption. But the moment you miss a piece of disruption on their pop off turn, you're just like, wow, I just like leaked 20 damage for no reason.
Yeah, very explosive, pretty fragile has been my experience. Although, yeah, 9D React package, pretty convincing looking game into Marionette. It's possible Naib cracked it. I saw him actually board out Art of Wars into the matchup, which I thought was really interesting. So, yeah, probably a lot to figure out with this hero.
Yeah, Emberblade does hit for a lot, so he does have a weapon.
Okay, to wrap this up, what are you playing for CCPQs? And if you had to recommend, let's say, 2 decks for CCPQs for our listeners, what would you recommend to people to play?
Let's start with the deck I am going to play. It's going to be Arachne Huntsman. I think this deck's actually really, really good. I've been having a lot of success with this deck, like more so than before. And I was playing the deck before I was having success with it, and now I'm having success with it, and I'm still playing it. So it's like it feels so good now. But I wouldn't recommend this deck to I think most people. This really does require you to like very specific things about this game for you to want to play this deck. What I would recommend is Arachne Marionette. I think this deck is really powerful, pretty easy to play, and just explosive, and your opponent can't do much into Arachne Marionette unless you like board in, as you said, like 9D reacts. Like when you have to just board in 9D reacts to try and beat Arachne Marionette, it's kind of a good spot to be in, because if your opponent doesn't do this, then like what's gonna happen? They're just gonna blow up, right?
Yeah. I think Marionette's a great choice. I would also say, despite there being none in top 8, I think Jacob was in 10th or 11th and very good conversion rate. So I wouldn't put too much weight on it not making top 8. I think Marionette is still a very, very good deck.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I think this deck's really good. It just has this like targetable weakness is the problem with this deck. But I think even with that, like they need to play pretty well into you to be able to beat you. So I would gladly bring Marionette if if someone said like you have to top 8 something this weekend, I'll be like, okay, I'll bring Marionette.
Yeah, good choice. And then second deck?
I don't know actually. There's so many decks that you can play now. I would play Verdance. I played Verdance a lot just in the past, so I would personally play Verdance. I just don't like the play pattern for what KO does, and I can't play Acilio, so I think like my default would just end up being Verdance, and you cannot make me play an aggro deck ever again in my life. So
yeah, and I think that Verdance is maybe not the best choice for a calling. Okay choice, not great. Really good choice for PQs. I agree with you with Marionette and Verdance being great choices. I guess I'll mention KO. Had some of the best stats on the weekend. Pretty straightforward to play. And honestly, I think gets a lot of agency. The deck is just so consistent now, and you lost Florian is no longer in the metagame, and that was one of your worst matchups. The matchup was terrible, actually. But now you're just kind of good into everything. So I think KO is a really good choice. And then after that, it gets a little tricky. I think that Phi is a pretty solid choice if you want something more straightforward, or I think Acilio might be a slightly more powerful deck, but harder to play. So depending on your Acilio reps, you could consider Acilio. But if you're just looking for something straightforward, powerful, aggressive, I think Phi is still a good choice. Not a best deck in format, you have to play this deck kind of choice, but still a good deck.
The running joke in with my friends with Acilio is if your name's not Michael, you don't really get to play Acilio.
I think there are other people that can play this, like Majin Bay can play Acilio, but yeah, a bit of a specialist deck for sure. It's easy to do the powerful stuff with Acilio some of the times. Like sometimes your hand just combos and you just do the thing and it's beautiful. But I think it's all the other turns where your hand's awkward or you have to consider your draws and which card to cycle when and all these kinds of things. Your opponent plays Amulet of Echoes. How do you win through Amulet of Echoes? There's a lot of nuance to this deck and a lot of tough decision points.
Yeah. When the deck is doing the thing it wants to do, not hard to play. When the deck is not doing the thing it wants to do, oh my god, it is awful to play.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and I guess we didn't actually ask you. There's a PQ coming up in Vancouver on Sunday. Do you know what deck you're playing for that one?
Either Acilio or Vinsat. I should be queued for this Pro Quest or for this Pro Tour off World Tour points. So I'll probably just be playing something to learn it and get some tournament experience with it. And that's probably what I'll be doing.
We also have a Pro Quest available to go to in, where is that, Tacoma, which is like maybe like a 5-hour drive away. Are you gonna go to that tomorrow?
No,
No,
I'm tired.
Fair
I'm
enough.
tired, and it's like 2 weeks from now I have a calling. A week from now I'm leaving for a week from then I'm leaving for Shanghai, which is another calling, and then I have a Pro Tour, and I'm just like, I don't even need to qualify for this tournament. Maybe I'll play the local one because it's easy, but maybe I won't take the 3-hour drive.
I wish it was 3 hours. It's more than 3 hours to Tacoma. It's like 3 hours to Seattle.
It's like 3 hours if there's no traffic, but there's always traffic every time, or like at all times a day, basically. Maybe not in like the middle of the night, but when you are driving there or driving back, it's going to be 3 hours. Or more than 3 hours, sorry.
Yeah, more than 3 hours. If it was 3 hours, I would snap go. I'm debating if I want to go by myself.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, anyways, good luck to everyone at your PQs. I think that hopefully we gave you some idea of the decks and that we think will be seen. I think Montreal is a good representation. I think that there are a lot of other decks you can bring too. I think the Guardians are reasonable angles of attack, for example, in a way they haven't been. Like Victor and Valda are decent. I think those are decks you could consider. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting time to be playing Classic Constructed. I think there's a ton of options out there, and if you are a specialist or you're wanting to play one of these more off the beaten track heroes, you have a good angle of attack. You just need to make sure you have game plans into some of the more represented decks in the room. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap. Thank you all for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, maybe send us some of those episode requests or guest requests for some of the content while we're in Japan. You can find us on social media. I'm at Yukili Bender on Twitter and Blue Sky, and Jay is at Ueda J over on Twitter, or X, I guess, as it's called now. We have an email, onthebobble@gmail.com, or you can find us through our Patreon Discord, patreon.com/onthebobble, and sign up that way. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap. Good luck to everyone for your PQs and any of your upcoming events.